Hey, this is Marquise Hill, and I'm here at the other side of the bell.
Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of the Bell, a podcast dedicated to everything trumpet, brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass. We'll help you take your trumpet playing to the next level. I'm John Snell, trumpet specialist at Bob Reeves Brass, and I'll be your host for this episode. My special guests today are Wayne Bergeron and Jeff Bunnell, joining us to talk about their new CD from the Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble, Homage. We'll get to Wayne and Jeff's interview here in a moment after a word from our sponsor and some trumpet news. Today's episode is brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass, who share your passion for creating extraordinary music. You know that feeling when your instrument just clicks and the music flows effortlessly? That's what Bob Reeves Brass has been helping customers do since 1968. We've helped brass musicians like you achieve their dreams by ensuring their equipment is always in perfect harmony. We know you want to immerse yourself in the art of music making, and we're here to remove any barriers between you and your creative vision. At Bob Reeves Brass, we work closely with you to understand your unique needs and provide tailored solutions like valve alignments, custom-fit mouthpieces from our extensive stock models or a hand-carved custom mouthpiece, gap adjustments with the Reeves sleeve system, or even tweaking your existing gear. No matter your level of experience, we offer free consultations and serve musicians from all walks of life. And if you're looking for the perfect instrument to inspire your next musical masterpiece, we proudly carry the exquisite Van Laar line of trumpets and flugelhorns, as well as the superb Charlie Davis line of trumpets. What's more, Bob Reeves Brass is taking their commitment to your musical journey even further. We're now offering a carefully curated collection of top-notch products designed specifically for brass musicians. You'll find premium guard bags to protect your beloved instruments, a diverse range of mutes from renowned brands like Ulvain mutes, Yupon and Okura mutes from Japan, Trumcore mutes, Rayano, Clary Wood mutes, and Charlie Davis mutes, ensuring you have the perfect mute for every performance. But that's not all. We've also got you covered when it comes to essential maintenance supplies, with a hand-picked selection of valve oils, lubricants, and more to keep your instruments in tip-top shape. Bob Reeves Brass is truly your one-stop shop for everything you need to fuel your passion and create music that touches hearts and souls. So go ahead, let us help you elevate your sound to new heights. Don't wait another moment to elevate your musical journey with Bob Reeves Brass. Connect with us at bobreeves.com, shoot us an email at info@bobreeves.com, and keep up with the latest news on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Bob Reeves Brass. Embrace your passion for music and let Bob Reeves Brass be your partner in creating the extraordinary. Well, happy November, everyone. As I mentioned in the last episode, we are heading on a plane this week. Brett and I are heading to Dylan Music in Woodbridge, New Jersey. So anyone in the New Jersey, Philadelphia, DC, and New York City area want to come visit us, we're going to be there November 9th, 10th, and 11th. So that's coming up quickly. As a matter of fact, all of our stuff is being shipped. It's somewhere between our shop and New Jersey as we speak. So at Dylan Music, we'll be doing a pop-up shop, doing valve alignments and mouthpiece consultations. So it's a great opportunity to try our over 350 plus models that are going to be there and have Brett and I there to help you through the process. And of course, if you are on the fence about getting an alignment, or if you're sure you want to get an alignment, it's a great opportunity because then you don't need to ship your horn across the country. So we are doing everything by appointment. So set up your appointment either for a consultation or an alignment, or if you're not sure what, doesn't matter. Just make your appointment. You can email sales@dylanmusic.com, or you can call them at 732-634-3399. And again, sales@dylanmusic.com, or the phone number 732-634-3399. And we'll have all of that information down below in the description of this podcast and also at the show notes for this podcast at bobreeves.com. I hope to see you there for a valve alignment or to try out one of our cool mouthpieces. I should mention, we're bringing our C2J mouthpieces, our artist models, and our secret menu mouthpieces like the 19 backbore and the new orchestral model. So things that aren't even on the website. So if you want to try any of those out, I hope to see you at Dylan Music this week. Now let's get right to my special guests today, Wayne Bergeron and Jeff Bunnell. Wayne Bergeron is enjoying a career as one of the most sought-after musicians in the world. Studio sessions, film dates, international touring, jazz concerts, guest appearances, and clinics keep him busy not only in his hometown of Los Angeles, but worldwide. Jeff Bunnell is a busy studio trumpet player as well in Los Angeles and a member of many top bands. Jeff arranges, orchestrates, and conducts music for television and film. Jeff is also a prolific composer and arranger, with many of his works in print, including 3 popular books of trumpet solo transcriptions. Jeff and Wayne are here to chat about their latest project, the Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble album, Homage, featuring 9 of LA's top trumpeters. Here's a couple clips from the album, the first featuring Wayne, and the second featuring Jeff. Let's listen. And now here's my interview with Wayne Bergeron and Jeff Bunnell. Well, I'm so excited about this episode of The Other Side of the Bell. I'm joined by 2 guests today, Wayne Bergeron and Jeff Bunnell. Wayne, Jeff, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. How's it going?
Awesome. I'm excited to talk about trumpet and also talk about the Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble album that just dropped, that you guys produced and played on and recorded and mastered and all that stuff. So we'll get into all of that here in a moment. But I want to start, because of the name of the CD is Homage. Will you guys talk a little bit, whoever wants to go first, about what being a studio player is all about in terms of where you came from, who came before you, and whose shoes do you have to fill?
Go ahead, Jeff. Why don't you start?
Wow. I mean, there's a huge tradition of session players in Los Angeles, and it's kind of, I'm thinking that this was the first place that had that kind of work, when they decided to add sound, and they were doing movies here in Hollywood. And they said, we got to have music, and they used to have the organists, in the silent films and in the actual theater, and now they're going to put music on a film, and there's been some amazing trumpet players, and I guess the guy that I think of right away is Euan Rasey, who was, and I took lessons from him, and I think Wayne might have taken some. I'm sure he did.
I did.
And he was unbelievably great and an incredible human being, and had a huge impact on not only my life, but I think really anyone that he crossed paths with, he would have an impact on them. And those guys set really high standards, for musicianship. And if you're going to do that kind of work, you have to, up your game and play at that high level. And
and I'm thinking, like, in history and also in trumpet pedagogy, I mean, there was no book written on how to be a great studio session player, and so Euan, Manny Klein, Conrad Gazzo, I mean, the list goes on of that kind of first generation of players. How about you, Wayne? I mean, who were your early inspirations in the studio world?
Well, in the studio world, all those names we just mentioned, of course, Conrad Gazzo, I always think of him as the godfather of lead trumpet, especially in a swing vein, but the Condoli brothers, of course, and even a little later, even, guys like Bobby Shue were the next generation after them, but players that really inspired me because of their versatility more than anything. When I, growing up, I never wanted to be a studio trumpet player. I didn't know what that meant. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be in Chicago. I wanted to be Lee Loughnane, be a rock star, and I'd heard Maynard Ferguson play then when I was young, and then okay, that's what I want to do, and so I had kind of natural high chops. So I didn't know what my path was going to lead me to. It was much later that I discovered other musical interests, and started getting into different kinds of music. And when I realized I wanted to work as a trumpet player, and this even goes back to the days when Jeff and I were working at Disneyland and we were young, and I was always a pretty, solid, high note lead kind of guy, but I'd be at Disneyland and there'd be 40 trumpet players working there over the holidays, and I'd hear all these great classical players and jazz players and people that could do other things, and it was kind of really inspiring for me to learn how to play other styles of music and try to get a little more diverse, with what I could do, and it's kind of evolved. I'm going to be 66 years old now, so it's taken a while, but kind of evolved, and I get to kind of do what my heroes did now. But
you're just getting there, Wayne.
I'm going to keep practicing because I'm just starting to get some stuff figured out.
I love it.
So anyway, we look back into tradition. Of course, you need to have one foot in tradition and one foot in the future, I think, because music has changed since those days as well, and I think, wearing as many hats as you can and doing it at a high level, your chances of being a studio type musician. I'm not even sure what that is, I just figure you have to be a good musician, and they put a microphone in front of you and now you're a studio musician.
That's it.
but there's some things we'll talk about later about how we do some of this stuff,
Yeah, and so actually that's kind of segue to my next question is when you guys first met. So that was in the Disney. You guys played in the Disneyland band together?
Probably was it, right? You think?
Well, it wasn't the Disneyland band, but it was
working down there at the park.
It was working at the park. Like I came in, Jeff was working in the fanfare trumpet unit when I came in there, and I came in and I got in my first year there. I was in a student band. They had student bands and union bands, and the Toy Soldiers were a student band. And anyway, I got in. I was in the monk band, and I don't mean Thelonious Monk. I mean like actual monks, where we wore monk outfits. And just let it be known, I was always commando under mine. But that's another podcast for another day. It was a bunch of great musicians. That trumpet player Don Clark, who Jeff and I know is a great player, and Kevin Brown, who is a very fine player, that a friend of ours. Yeah. And a guy named Dave Herrera, who I haven't seen in years, but he was a good trumpet player at the time and was a leader of the band. Anyway, so I met Jeff and several other trumpet players way back then. And all that, I think Jeff will probably agree to this, but all that friendly competition amongst all these trumpet players being backstage and warming up and playing duets over here, and we're all, kind of mesmerized by what some other people could do. And I think it made us all better musicians. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We all learned from each other. I've always learned more from somebody. I hear them do something, I go, hey, I don't do that as well as them. And you start imitating. And so I think it was a really great training ground. Well, it was for me anyway, and I'm sure Jeff would agree with that, But I think that's where we met the first time, was there.
Yeah. I think we met somewhere, 1980, I think.
Or that sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, only 43 years ago.
Oh my God.
And you guys are here still to talk about it. So, it started in Disneyland, but you guys have been playing sessions together. What, Kubis band together? I mean, what are some of the things, the highlights that you guys have played together?
Yeah, all the above. Yeah, I mean, we've done so many gigs together.
We played a lot. Jeff and I played a lot together. There was a band called the Orange County Rhythm Machine, which was kind of the predecessor to Tom Kubis's band. And Jeff and I weren't in the band, but we were kind of regular subs.
Yeah.
And so I would see Jeff there, and there was a couple other trumpet players, a guy named Dan McGurn, who retired as a trumpet player, but started playing again just recently and lives in Texas. Great player. A colleague of ours, Gary Holopoff, who was a hero of both Jeff and I back then. He was like the guy that everybody was looking up to at Disneyland, this great lead trumpet player that was very musical and nice guy. And he passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago.
We lost Gary, nicest guy in the world.
Anyway, he was a great guy. So those were, and Daryl Gardner is another name. I don't know if you know that name, but these were all really fine players that a lot of people didn't know about. You know, they weren't in the limelight, they weren't doing studio work, and but they were playing at Disneyland or doing these big bands, and were quite good. So Jeff and I think, you know, we followed in their footsteps. I think they might have set us down the right path. Yeah. You know, because I was inspired by all of their playing, you know, and Jeff's playing as well. You know, I was never an improviser, and I started hearing these guys that could.
Well, you are now, though.
I'm not really redefining Western harmony or anything, but I can fumble my way through a tune or two, you know. So, which I didn't do at all when I was at Disneyland. I was not an improviser at all. I just a lead trumpet player, and you know.
Well, that's funny because when I was in college and I took a solo, my professor said, "John, you're redefining Western harmony. Stick to the changes." So maybe that's a good thing.
Try feeling something in B flat, you know.
And so it's interesting, you know, you bring up Disneyland because there is such a rich musical, you know, upbringing there in terms of the bands and the music. And one of the seminal albums was on Disneyland Records was Tootie's Trumpets, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And it was on Disney Records back in, what was that, 56, 57, 1957?
57.
Yeah, what was it like back then, Joe? Yeah.
Well, let's see. I wasn't even in the womb, so I don't know.
So, I mean, what I loved about that album was, you know, a lot of those guys, I mean, they had, some of them had solo careers, some of them were names in and among themselves, but so many of those players on there were kind of unsung heroes that no one knew about. And now, instead of just playing a little 4-measure solo or some high note on a, you know, Frank Sinatra album, they're featured. So can you guys talk a little bit about, you know, what that album meant to you and how that was, you know, how that impacted what you guys decided to do with Homage?
Go ahead, John.
Wow. So I moved here to go to college, and I had known this trumpet player, Mike Plumley, who's a great player, actually. He played on Buddy Rich's band, and he's an attorney now. And he was taking lessons from Yuan Racy, and I was going to Long Beach State, and he said, "You should take some lessons from this guy." And I didn't know who he was, and but I found out right away that he could see every flaw in your playing, and he would help you like learn about it and get better. And so then I was like, well, I want to learn about this guy, and I know he played the solo on Chinatown. And then Mike said, well, you did this record, Tootie's Trumpets, so I got that. And it's a great record, and those guys are great. I mean, and it was great to listen to those players, and you know, Tootie Camarada, he wrote for those people. So for someone that could improvise great, he wrote a feature that was all about their improvising, and Conrad Gazzo was so lyrical. We have a register, and he wrote the Trumpeter's Prayer for him, and just all these people who were just fantastic players that are in the background, and this was like a chance for them to get some notice that they really deserved. I mean, they're great players. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I don't know how many times I've listened to that record, but quite a bit, I will say.
I've listened to it just recently, a matter of fact. I listened to Tootie's Trombones and Tootie's Trumpets. Okay. And the reason I did is because Tootie's grandson owns Sunset Sound in Hollywood. And we were talking about that he wants to recreate Tootie's Trumpets, or at least some of it. Yeah. So he was talking to me about it, you know, about who would we get and how would we do this. And so it made me go listen to those things again. And it's amazing to me how tight it is. I mean, I don't know how much they rehearse this. I mean, because it's pretty darn challenging music. But those players played together a lot. So they were kind of like road bands are always so tight because they play together every night together. These players played together a ton. They knew each other's idiosyncrasies and all those things. So the stuff is spot on. I mean, it's just spot on. Like there was no Pro Tools back then, so there was no making it spot on. If it wasn't right, they had to play it again. If it wasn't right, So anyway, it's but there's something special about that record, even recording quality wise. It still sounds good sonically. The balances are pretty amazing, and I'm sure it's just balance within the room. They're probably not on individual mics. There's probably 2 mics up in front of them doing this. And anyway, I wore that. My trumpet teacher, Ron Savitt, who was my junior high band director, introduced me to Tootie's trumpets. And I loved everything about it, man. I love Conrad Gazzo's Trumpeter's Prayer, of course. I listen to it now, and it sounds very corny with the vocals in there and stuff, but the sound, his presence of tone, is just kind of unmatched. I mean, you can just hear how searing it is, on the recording. You can tell that this is somebody that's not holding back. He's putting some air through that horn. Yeah. And I always loved. I think it was Shorty Chirac played the thing with the half valve. I forget what the name of the tune is. I always loved that. That tickled me for whatever reason. I used to listen to that over and over. But anyway, that record, much like for Jeff, was a huge influence on me. And a little part of this is kind of why this trumpet ensemble CD came into play. Jeff had talked about Tootie's trumpets, and even though this is different type thing, it was inspired by that, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I want to get into that, but just as a fan of trumpet and a fan of the studio players here in LA, it's like I wished, I always wish there was a 60s Tootie's trumpets and a 70s Tootie trumpets, to capture those to capture those players, at that time in something that's not, obviously we can hear them in the movie theaters and on albums and things in those moments, but just to feature them on brass solo music,
I feel like I was born about 40 years too late. Because I would have loved to have lived in that era when that kind of music was happening. Because even though we do a lot of different kind of things, playing what my musical soul lives in that era. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to have been playing dates for Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Keely Smith. And even though I did get to do a couple of records with Keely Smith with Billy May doing the charts, even so I got a little taste of that. But I would have loved to have been. And my wife even says that when she hears me play some gig where we're doing that music, she goes, "You're just happy when you're playing like that," and that's very true. So.
Yeah,
and my next life,
and we'll get into that because you did do the Trumpeters Prayer on Homage, and we'll talk about that track here in a little bit. But I want to know where we've talked about the kind of the context of the history of trumpet playing here in Hollywood. Where did the seed of this idea for this album come from, Jeff? Where
Well, actually,
where did the spark come from?
You need to ask Wayne because there was one moment where Wayne just. I don't remember if we were like walking out to our cars or something from a gig or whatever, but he just goes, we should do a trumpet ensemble CD. And I thought about it and I thought, yeah, actually, but what I don't know is what led Wayne to say that.
Well, I can tell you because we would do things like on Yuan Racy's birthday. Every trumpet player in town would go to Yuan's house in his driveway, and people would play, and we would play in some of Jeff's arrangements. Jeff would bring then some other things as well, and we would play these trumpet ensemble arrangements. And for different functions like that, we'd done these things a few times. When Yuan passed away and we had his celebration of life at the Odyssey Club up there, my big band played, and I was kind of a co-MC of the thing. And Jeff, had a trumpet ensemble played, and I think, did you guys play? Because I don't remember if I played with the ensemble because I had my big band there, but
I think you played. Did you not play the Trumpeter's Prayer though?
Maybe I did. Yeah, I this. But anyway, so that what kind of sparked these things at these events, and I think Jeff's right. We were walking out, so we record this stuff. So Jeff wrote some more, and we we can get into how we recorded it and what we did, at any time. But that's how this thing was born, I think.
An idea walking out to the parking lot after a session. So
go ahead, let me just say one thing. So when Wayne suggested that, and I thought a lot about it, and I thought about Tootie's trumpets, and I thought, if we're going to do this, I should write. And Wayne and I talked kind of initially about who should be in this group, who should we get. Because it shouldn't be just like Wayne and I just recording all the parts. We should get a group.
Even though it would be way better like that. And so I had an idea in my mind, and it's amazing that we called 6 people, and those first 6 all said yes. So these were the first 6 that we wanted there, and they all agreed to it. And so I wrote kind of like what Tootie did. I wrote for those people, and so I wrote some challenging stuff. But everyone's can play. So I was never worried. Is this going to be too hard? That wasn't ever the thought that crossed my mind.
Amazing. Now, did you already have some of the tunes written already, like for Yuan's thing, or was everything written from scratch? Okay.
But I revised them. I mean, some of them were pretty simple. Some of these things, like Yuan's thing, there's no rehearsing, and if you write something that's really challenging that would need to be rehearsed, it wouldn't come off.
Yeah.
But for this recording, I didn't hold anything back, and I wrote some challenging stuff, and everybody just nailed their parts. I mean, which I knew would happen, but
it's L.A.
yeah. Well, yeah.
And so let me just run down the names here on the album for the folks listening. So obviously we have Jeff and Wayne on there, John Lewis, Dan Fernero, Marisa Benedict, Dan Rosenboom, Rob Scheer, Larry Hall, and Dan Savant. And the amazing thing about LA is, that's the 8 you have on the album. There's probably another 10 or 15, if not more, players that you could have called.
Sure.
Which is, just a testament to how deep the talent runs here in Hollywood. But so take us into the recording. So did you guys have rehearsals going into it, or was it you had the one day and boom and go? What did the recording look like?
Definitely not that.
Yeah. So we had a read through at my house.
Okay.
And I listened to everything, and even though when you write something you can kind of hear it in your head, but when it gets played is really where the rubber meets the road. And so I tweaked a few things, and we had another read through, and then it seemed like we were good to go, and then we just needed to start recording, and since I copied everything in Finale, I could email parts to people, and so people could get their parts in advance and take a look at them.
That day
I definitely.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that day we rehearsed at Jeff's house, though, was the day Jeff's neighbors stopped talking to him.
eight trumpet players show up. I'm just amazed that you got all 8 of you in one place at one time. That's astounding.
That turned out to be the last time.
We'll get into that when you ask how we recorded this, and I will get into that.
Yeah, that was that. Unfortunately, it was so easy. I called people up. Hey, how's next Tuesday? Hey, we're good. And then we did a second read through. How about Friday? Okay, we're good. And then that was it. And when you use players that are great players, they're in demand. I'm not the only one. Wayne and I were like, what about us? But it's, they're working. Wayne too. We're all working. So that became the challenge. Was not how to get this stuff played, but get us together so we could play it.
Well, we were trying. We recorded, I would say 95% of it at my house here.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
4 in this room and 4 in the living room.
And Wayne was the engineer also on those sessions.
I was in the living room with an iPad, trying to play this hard music and engineer. It got frustrating. So what we started doing is doing 4 at a time. Mm-hmm. And so that became problematic too, because these 4 are supposed to play these parts, but these 4 can make it today. well, these parts don't really work together as a section, so we'd have to wait, or we maybe switch. Okay, you're going to play second trumpet on this now, and we'll rearrange it. Because Jeff kind of specifically had who he wanted to play what, even within the section stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we recorded this 4 at a time. And we did a couple of sessions at Dan Savant's studio just because I wasn't available or whatever, and it was something I didn't plan, so they would do 4 of the trumpets over there, and we'd kind of set up the same way, use the exact same mics, all of that, just so there wouldn't be too much sonic difference. And
let me just say one thing about the parts. So everybody in this group can play first, and probably is used to playing first, often. Not all the time, but so what I didn't want to do is have someone play like 7th trumpet. That's all they play. You're only playing 7 trumpet parts. And even though they could, but it's totally boring. And also it doesn't, I wanted to show off everyone. So everyone played first on at least one thing. And then everyone had to play 8th on at least one thing, And then I just spread the parts out, and
Share the love around, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can hear it. When you listen to the album, you can hear everyone's voice in there throughout the tunes, and it's, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up. I mean, and I want to get more into the geeky stuff about the recording, because I know we have a lot of listeners that record at home or session players themselves wherever they are in the world. But before we get too geeky, I do want to talk about the tune selection, because it's all over the map. I mean, you have in your face, loud, high, you have ballads, you have jazz tunes, you have film classics. How did you choose the tunes? With Jeff, was it mostly from you, or did you guys collaborate on what tunes to do?
I think Wayne and I would have some ideas, and I'd run them by Wayne, and so I thought about Tootie's trumpets, and I thought about how Tootie had picked tunes that would feature certain players, and then I thought about how versatile the LA session trumpet players are. And so I thought, I want to show that versatility on this CD. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to pick all diverse kinds of music and styles of music. And everyone here, everybody could play all these styles. I mean, people might take it for granted, but it's kind of a big deal to be able to play, like a jazz musician, and then like a classical musician, and then like a rock musician, like all this stuff. So I that's why I was thinking of is how best to present these 8 great players. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I came up with. In fact, what happened was, at the end of the second read through, I was talking with Larry Hall. And Larry Hall was like, wow, we got a lot of diverse music here. And I said, we don't have like a Jerry Hay kind of chart. And I said, I just couldn't figure out how to do one. And then Larry said, well, maybe Jerry would want to write a chart for this project. And I go,
they're best friends, by the way, Larry and Jerry. Are best friends.
So I said,
Larry and Jerry.
Yeah. And
Larry and Jerry, yeah.
There you go. So anyway, I said, well, I don't think I can really afford to have Jerry do this. I mean, he's, the top of the heap there. And so he goes, well, let me talk to him. And Jerry graciously said, I'll just write you guys a chart. And his chart's amazing. And the perfect closer, because I don't think anything can follow his chart.
Whew. That last lick. Oh my gosh.
Man. Yeah,
that is so tight, and I can't imagine having to play that.
We had to play that, and he was there, no pressure or anything.
I was going to say, talk about the top of the heap. He's on top of the heap of players that couldn't be able to play that
lick. He did play that lick. You
wouldn't want to hear my part soloed on that, though.
I don't know.
It's kind of interesting because, the lick like that, nobody can play that note for note perfectly. It's the shape of a line. So if I can get the first note and get the shape of the line, go, so I'm getting all the, but you hear it sounds like a siren of you. So it goes, so it's kind of funny, and how that came to be. So maybe I'll share that solo track with you one day. 'Cause I popped that on as an overdub, you know.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, Wayne. It's nice to know that you guys are human.
Yeah. Well, I have to get to meet somebody that could play that perfectly, so I don't think there's out there that I know.
But it is true, and as you know, since the theme of the album is paying tribute to the music in the Hollywood and Hollywood trumpet players. I mean, even though Jerry's still writing and still an important part of LA, I mean, the last 40 years of his work, I mean, is put LA on the map in terms of horn section writing and the biggest artists of our time, much like this Wrecking Crew guys and Muscle Shoals and all that stuff back east. So it's great. He
redefined pop horn.
Yeah.
Writing.
Yes.
He really did, and he has other skills. I mean, just besides his pop, I mean, he can write anything. His string writing is beautiful. He's a fantastic all around composer.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you kind of brought that up, Wayne. He was there for the session. What was that like? I mean, I know, and you guys have recorded with him before, but I mean, was it particularly more difficult having him there running the session?
No, he's cool, man. He's super nice, man, and he's I played a bunch of dates for him, since he doesn't play anymore, so I do a lot of his sessions now, and it's all a little nerve wracking because. Here's the guy, even though he doesn't play anymore, you go, well, none of us are ever going to be able to play it as good as he used to be able to. I mean, that's just a fact. Jerry Hay, in my opinion, in his prime, was untouchable as a player. Chops, sound, all of it. I mean, it just...
everything.
Insane, So we all aspire to be that good, But, he was something else, so I have the utmost of respect for him when he's on the podium, and he's always very nice and very confident. So he's cool, though. There was no, I don't think anybody felt uptight. He makes everybody feel good, and would just get it right. He'll let you know when it's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. His ears are incredible. What he hears in a session is, I mean, he can just pick stuff out, time-wise or intonation-wise.
Unbelievably great ears, yeah.
Hey, so let me share this Jerry Hay story. And it just clued me in. I'd heard him play with Seawind live and the records, and so I knew the guy was great. And he was getting all these Grammys, and all through the 80s, just huge. And I worked with him, I think in like 89 or 90. The first time I worked with him, and I still remember this, but I was doing this date, and we recorded at Evergreen. It was for the Universal Studios had this Flintstones stage show, and we were pre-recording their music. And the trumpets were Charlie Davis and Jerry Hay and me and Dan Savant, who played. He was the contractor, but he was in the section at that time. And at the end of the day, whoever the arranger was, he didn't know the end of the Flintstones theme, and he didn't find it out. And so he got there and he just guessed, but he guessed wrong. And so we played the end of the Flintstones theme. We recorded that, but we all know this theme. We grew up with listening to it, right? And it's wrong. And so now the people in the booth are freaking out, like, oh, it's wrong. We can't have this on the show. And Jerry Hay's just kind of calmly sitting there, and he turns to Dan and he says, I know the end of the Flintstones theme. So Dan is in the middle of the room, right, on this orchestra. So he stands up and goes, hey, would you mind if Jerry Hay? And they say, oh, no, that'd be great. So Jerry, now all I know at this point is that Jerry plays trumpet and he writes. But there's so much more to him, and I found that out immediately. So he walked to the piano and played the last 20 bars on the piano. Both hands, like, voiced out, like, and it was exactly right. And the room's like, oh, that's it. And he goes, okay, violin 1. And then he dictated every person's part in the whole orchestra off the top of his head. He orchestrated it, and boom, and then we recorded it, and it was great. And I was just like, oh my goodness. That's and that's him. I mean, that's another day at the office for him. And that's huge,
I've seen him do that before. We did an Arturo Sandoval record, and we had he was doing this Trumpet Evolution record, and he was doing Harry James, and the chart was all wrong. So there was all kinds of wrong voicings. So we took an hour break, and Jerry got at the piano, and started listening to the original recording, and did the same thing, pretty much dictated parts and notes, and fixed it right on the spot,
Man.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the opening track, Give It One. Obviously, any trumpet player, that's, fan of Maynard or just a fan of trumpet knows that tune. Why did you choose Give It One? And what was it like arranging such a complicated, big band chart and make it work for just trumpets?
So let me say this. So knowing Wayne was going to be part of this project and knowing that he's this world-class trumpet player, I thought, I want to feature him on something, at least one thing, or probably more than one thing. And I was just thinking, and somehow I just thought about, so the first time I heard Maynard was on a record and it was Give It One. And I still remember that day, and I thought, I wonder if that could work for trumpet ensemble. And I basically took down the big band chart and then edited out the sax solo, so it's just like the chart with the trumpet solo, and it actually worked, and there was some places where there were like a drum fill, there was dead space, so I wrote some music to go in there so the chart could keep moving, and Wayne, I didn't even question that Wayne would say, I knew he would kill the thing, and then. I just kind of transcribed Maynard's solo and I sort of put it in the part. I said, hey, here's Maynard's solo if you want to do something with that. And Wayne's like, yeah, I'm going to do my own solo. And I love Maynard, but I think Wayne's solo is actually better. I don't want to create sacrilege. But if Maynard, let's say that it's equal to what Maynard did. It's a great solo. So
well, there's a lot of Maynard influence in it, and even the first couple I played, it's hard to not play some of his stuff when you're playing his stuff. It just creeps in there. On another slightly different topic, that trumpet on the wall over there, the upper one right there.
Yeah.
That was Maynard's. Oh no, that's the one. That was the horn Maynard played when I was on his band.
Oh, how cool!
He played that horn in the '80s for about 8 years, probably, till he went to Monette.
Oh man, what a treasure!
Yeah,
so
it sucks, but I don't really like it. But I'm glad I have it. It's okay. It's just not my cup of tea. But anyway, like Jeff, I remember hearing "Give It One" for the first time. It was 1971. I was at the Orange Coast College Jazz Festival, and Maynard's band was there. And they came out and opened to that. And as a kid, my jaw was on the ground. We couldn't believe it. And that's a moment that's ingrained in my memory, from that time. So getting to play that, I always, to be honest with you, I always avoid playing charts like this when I do guest artist things. They go, "You want to play Give It One?" I go, "Nope. I don't want to do Maynard's stuff because you're always compared to Maynard." So I'd rather just do my own stuff. But on something like this, which is very different because there's no rhythm section, it was, fun to try to pull it off,
So in that solo, Wayne, because that's what I was going to bring up. You're paying homage to Maynard, and there's obviously, you can hear the influence in your solo, but it also is uniquely Wayne Bergeron. It's you. What was that going through your head, or were you just sitting down listening to it and then just playing?
It kind of was. I knew how I was going to start it. I was looking at this thing and trying to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to come off of the fall? Because wow, that's my note in the part too. So I just figured I'd come off the fall and start the solo from the fall note, and then and kind of touch on Maynard's opening a little bit, and then went into my own thing, and then ended kind of the way Maynard does. Same notes anyway, rhythmically a little different, but the And Maynard did that a lot. When I played with him, I listened to him solo, and I always thought it was cool that he wouldn't just go to a high note. He'd go to a high note and then come down to a cool note.
Yeah.
And Bobby Shue used to do that a lot too. And I go, it's almost more exciting than just launching up to the highest note to show your control, and go and do this thing and then come down. And Maynard did that a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I always thought that was more impressive than just launching up to a note,
Yeah. What was Maynard's big opening that he always walk out
Blue
to?
Birdland.
Blue Birdland. He would do that on that. Yeah.
If he was tired, he wouldn't do that. He'd just go up to the A. But if he was feeling good, he'd do the C sharp, down to the A. I did that at Maynard's tribute after he died in St. Louis. And we did Blue Bird on the whole chart. And Roger Ingram and I and Carl Fisher, this guy, we all got to do that each our own version of it throughout the thing, and I got to do the last one, so I did the C sharp to A.
But quintessential Maynard. And the other thing, and I mean, there's an hour of music on this album, and I'd love to go through each one of the charts, but I love the opening because you open it with "Give It One," and then you go to one of it's kind of like a sleeper film soundtrack, Silverado. That's one of my favorite soundtracks, and you don't hear it tossed around with Jurassic Park and Star Wars and those sorts of things. Mainly because
it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So why did you choose Silverado? And
so I'll tell you. So the trumpet ensemble, a cappella trumpet ensemble, is like a traditional classical group. Like a brass quintet. It's traditional. So I thought we should open with "Give It One" to let people know that this is not your father's trumpet ensemble. And then I thought the next piece should be something that's classical to say, but we can do that, and here this is, And Bruce Broughton is a world-class composer. He could have been a concert pianist. He has those kind of piano chops. He's brilliant in so many ways. And that score is great. I have a lot of his scores, soundtracks. But there's something about that thing that really works great with trumpets, and so anyway, I chose that as something to, and it's a great piece. So
John Lewis is soloing, playing the solo trumpet on that.
Yeah,
amazing.
He's great, and everyone. There's all sorts of stuff in that arrangement, and. Anyway, it's really, what I did was I just took down the main title, and I took down the end title, and I used quite a bit of the main title and some of the end title, and just kind of put him in and reorchestrated it. But I used a lot of his counter melodies, and he's so brilliant, and I didn't see any point in trying to redefine his writing when his writing is perfect. So it's kind of like taking Mozart and then changing it. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
So it's not really like an arrangement. It's just more like an adaptation and an orchestration. But it worked great.
Yeah. Tell me about the song for Barry. You did. You transcribed Michael Brecker's solo for this ensemble.
So I'm a huge fan of the Brecker brothers, and I'd like that tune, and I'd written this kind of simple chart on it before Wayne suggested that we do this CD. So I thought, well, this is a cool tune, and I said, but now I should really do a good chart on it. And then I thought, we should do something. It should be more than just the chart. It should be something that stands out about it. And I thought, why not transcribe Michael Brecker's solo and harmonize it for 4 trumpets? And I used this voicing that stays exactly the same, so everybody plays his solo, but in a different key together, and the voicing stays the same. It totally works. So no one had a weird. it's tricky enough because he played it and it works on saxophone, but it doesn't totally lay on the trumpet.
Not
So Jeff, you kind of wrote it as if it was if like you put a harmonizer on it, like everything is parallel. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Dan Fernero, as it turned out, I asked him to play first on that, and he goes, "Oh, this is one of my most favorite tunes," and he knew it, and he played. Everyone played great. Dan really nailed that trumpet solo, especially. But he's a great player, and it sounded great.
So that's him. So that's Dan on that.
He's playing lead on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing first.
Awesome.
And actually, so I sent the tracks from the CD last night actually, to Randy Brecker, who was in Japan, and he was flying back, and I'd sent him an email about it, and he goes, "Yeah, send me the tracks," and he listened to it last night before he got on the plane, and he really liked it. And
awesome.
So I was hoping he would say something about Sound for Barry, and that probably will be in a future email. But anyway, he liked it.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to bring up is, and I mean, this touched me before I even heard the track, but the fact that you included Chinatown, which is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you guys brought it up already, but if you were to like list off the quintessential trumpet solos in Hollywood history, Yuan playing the Chinatown solo, the fact that was included and the person that you had play it was just so touching, Larry Hall.
Yeah.
How did that decision come around, and tell us about Chinatown?
Well, actually, let me talk a little bit. Wayne was there. I couldn't make that session. Wayne was there when Larry played the solo. But, so of course, I thought, Yuan Racy, we have to have something that he did. And he did so many important things that wasn't actually hard. And of course, the obvious choice was Chinatown. I transcribed, so I took that off the record. These things you can't just go, here's all the Chinatown music, you got to transcribe it off these recordings. And I did this, so that chart is actually my arrangement of it. I took the chords off and then just wrote my own chart on it. And I thought a lot about who should play that solo, and any of us could have done a great job. But, Larry Hall is such a great musician, and I thought, he would be great on this, and it would be good to have him do something that's a feature. And the last thing I said to him was, so I wrote out the way Yuan played that melody, but I said, don't do that. Play the melody that the way Larry Hall would do it, because Yuan's already done that. And so, I mean, Wayne was there, but he did it the way Larry Hall, and it sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those, by the way, are Larry Hall's last recorded notes before he retired. He'd already retired because he had some tinnitus issues, and the volume of everything was kind of crushing him, so sadly, when voice missed, but but he got his chops together because he wanted to do this. And I said, "We just come over here and you let us overdub you, so you can take your time." And then I got a few versions out of him, and I gave him a couple of suggestions, but he basically I told him same Jeff. I go, "Yeah, you can make it your own, It's just a tribute to you. Yeah. We're not trying to imitate him,
and by the way, Larry getting his chops together is still, Larry's such an incredible player for the folks that don't know him.
I probably played with Larry more than anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were the Pantages, right?
We were the Pantages for 22 years together. So we did a lot of shows together and sat in the pit, for a long time, sometimes for, we did Wicked, for 3 times. One time was 2 years. Another time was 9 months. And so we played together a lot. So I know his playing very well. And one of the things about Larry, man, is that's a standout for him is he never wants to be in the limelight. He doesn't care about playing solos. He prides himself in being a great section player, and with this beautiful sound. As he's got a great sound, man. Larry Hall has a gorgeous tone, and very mild mannered, even keeled,
Yep.
So he fits in, and he's a team player no matter what he does. But he really shines on this, I think. You know, I'm kind of proud that I got to record him and capture that moment. You know, so.
And that's why, seeing that on the album and seeing who was featured on it. I mean, he's a guy who spent his whole career playing his ass off, and he's a great section player. But you hear him play lead, or I mean, he could sit any chair.
Larry, especially back in the day, he could play some lead. You know, he had some high chops, and he kind of changed. You know, we were talking about earlier. You know, about being versatile. Mm-hmm. I think he got away from small mouthpiece and all that stuff he used to do on Buddy's band and started going, well, okay, I'm a classical player too. And so he changed his equipment all towards that kind of thing and became a different kind of player, you know, but a very well-rounded, versatile, in-demand player, you know.
Yeah, and I want to spend a moment just to make sure we hit everyone on here, because we talked about John and his solo, we talked about Dan. Now, Marisa, well, she was just on the podcast a couple months ago. Fabulous player. She's moved out of town, but she still flies back. That's how in demand she is. Talk about Marisa Benedict a little bit, about working with her and what she did on the album.
So she played first on the Superman track.
And is featured on that,
Yeah, and also Procession of the Nobles, John Lewis, I think, played first on that, but the first notes are the third trumpet player, and that's Marisa, so that she plays by herself, starting that piece until the rest of us come in. Yeah.
That's her, Mm-hmm. And you hear...
go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always likes the way she bounces the notes. It sounds like a basketball. Like the notes bounce, you know, and it gives it really good forward motion. A lot of people play that and it sounds sterile. It sounds like, you know, and she makes it go someplace, you know, with her. She has the front end of her notes are really pristine.
Yeah. And she's a great player, so.
Yeah, and then speaks to the studio players out here. You know, like she goes and plays in the symphonies. I think she's with Pasadena, and she subs with the chamber orchestra. And John Lewis plays in Santa Barbara Symphony. I mean, you guys aren't just sitting in the studios all day. You're out playing live and doing the thing. Good friend of mine, Dan Rosenboom. You know, what was he featured on anything?
So Dan played first on the Olympic Fanfare. And I think he played first on JFK because John had the solo part, John Lewis. And Dan Rosenboom, I'm going to say the same thing. Everyone sounded great. Dan Rosenboom's a great player.
Yeah, he is.
And a great musician, and just sounded wonderful on whatever part he had. And he really nailed, you know, there's no hiding on the Olympic Fanfare. I mean, there's no hiding anywhere, really.
Anywhere. An hour of playing, there's no hiding. There's not one place to hide. Yeah.
Dan is a unique musician too. I mean, everybody's got their thing in the group. We all have things we do better than some of the other things we do. Dan is unique to the group because he's probably the most avant-garde player of the group. Like his band, you've seen him play. He plays some extremely difficult music that requires, you know, some pretty amazing trumpet skills. And then he can blow over these things. I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's free jazz because it's not free jazz, but it sounds like free jazz. Yeah. But it's very, very structured. And, you know, he's quite the player on that level, you know, and his mind works differently than the rest of ours, apparently. You know?
And it speaks to the versatility, be able to go play that.
And great classical player. And another great section player. I play with him a lot, and he's a very good, you know, playing within the section. He's a team player, you know, so.
Another young guy, Rob Shearer.
Rob also is a great, I mean, everyone's great. Rob played first on Shadow Your Smile. He's got a little bit of a Hello Mom at the end of it. Yeah. Near the end. And he's, you know, he's great. He sounded great, really. And, you know, every part he played he sounded great, you know. And he's a team player and did great.
Yeah, Rob, I met Rob I was a guest artist at UCF in Florida when he was playing first trumpet in the college band, in his college band back there, and that's when we met. And I encouraged him to come out and do the Disney All-American College Band, so I got to see him again there. And he was also a very fine, he was just a big band lead trumpet player back then. I didn't know him as anything else, but he came out here and he went to USC and he got his doctorate and he studied with Don Green, and Don Green turned him into. He was already a good classical player, apparently. I didn't know that at the time. He studied with this guy, John Almeida from UCF, who was a great teacher. And he, Don Green molded him into this. Rob may be one of the most versatile trumpet players in this town. Mm-hmm. And he's 43 years old now, I think. Maybe he's 44. He's a year older than my daughter. And he got here. He got some opportunities. He ran with it, and he's become kind of one of the very top call film players now.
Yeah, which is, having interviewed a lot of you guys for the podcast, is rare to be in at that level at that young, because he's been in the scene for a number of years already, and he's in his early 40s.
He's done very well, and he's as you can hear his sound on that. Rob has a big sound. Mm-hmm. He's a really special. He's a special player, I think.
And
as everybody on here,
Well, everyone on here is great. That's the thing. And
I'm
then
special in other ways. I'm just kind of special.
Last but not least is Dan Savant, which is amazing because he's an amazing player, but he also has his own business and does the payroll and contracting and all that stuff. But talk about Dan a little bit. What was he on?
Go ahead, Jeff. Why don't you?
So first off, Dan's grandfather was session trumpet player.
Silvio Savant.
Yeah.
And he worked over at MGM, and so one of Dan's early teachers was Rafael Mendez. Like, how do you get that?
Yeah.
And so Dan actually played on the soundtrack to The River that featured Warren Looning, and that's just if you want to hear Warren sounding just great. He was an amazing trumpet player.
He was.
But that soundtrack, he sounds great, and Dan's on that, just in the section, So when Larry Hall, his tinnitus just got the better of him, and he finally said, I can't play anymore. And so Wayne and I were like, well, we got to replace him because we're not done with the record. And we both said, well, what about Dan Savant? So we asked him, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so he came on and finished out the charts that we had yet to record that Larry hadn't done yet.
It's just coincidence that he has the best wine collection too. That had nothing to do with it.
I love it. So now I appreciate you, talking about all these players and also getting to know, when we can listen to them. I want to talk. Let's get geeky now. Let's talk about the actual recording. What mics did you guys use, and how did you set them up?
Now, that's a Wayne question, pretty much.
We used Royers on everything.
Okay.
A Royer 122s and 121s. Mm-hmm. And we were just set up in a row. Well, we recorded in this room. We recorded facing that direction. And some of it's in my living room, though. So because as this started, it was evolving. And my neighbors didn't really like that as much. But I'd have cables run out from here. It was my house. My wife was just... I'm building a recording studio in my backyard because of this project. Because my wife said we're never doing that again. So I have a structure in the back that we're in the middle of now that's much bigger than this too. So, but anyway, so we used Royer mics. I did on JFK. I have two mics on John. It's blended. I have an AEA R92 and a Royer 122. And they're blended together a little bit, and that's the only one it's like that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it just gave a little more warmth to the thing for whatever reason, and then, so that one thing is like that. Yeah.
Now, what about positioning of the mics? When how far away were they?
A foot and a half.
Okay, so
you don't want to get right on them, A lot of people, when you see young people, especially trying to mic a trumpet, and they put the microphone, I go, you don't want to hear that. Because all the noise is at the bell. You know, the tone of the trumpet doesn't develop for several feet in front of it. Mm-hmm. So that's why when you hear airiness in somebody's sound, a lot of times the mic's just too close, because it doesn't matter how great of a sound you have. Even John Lewis, who has a very pure sound, you put that mic right at you're going to hear that crap, you know. Mm-hmm. So a little distance is good, and so you get a little bit of room, and you get a little bit of sonic real estate, as opposed to everybody being in a lane, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always heard that you never wanted to sit right in front of the Chicago Symphony Brass section. As great as Bud Herseth was and all those guys.
Yeah,
you never wanted to sit the row in front of them, so yeah.
As far as mic pre's and stuff, I'm using Focusrite ISA 2s here, and there's way more expensive mic pre's you can use, but a great engineer friend of ours, Andy Waterman, whenever I recorded at his studio, I go, man, I always like the sound I get here. What do you use on us? Mm-hmm. And you use a Royer, and he goes, well, I use these Focusrites on the trumpets. So I went and immediately bought, 4 channels worth. Wow. And I use an Apollo 8P, interface. But I also have 4 channels of AD converter. This is the important part of it. What's going in, so even though the converters and these Apollos and stuff are pretty good, my goal here was to I want my stuff going in to that microphone as good as anywhere in town, right? I'm never going to be really mixing here, so all that other gear, the hundreds of thousands of dollars of other gear, I'm not investing in. But I wanted to make sure what goes into these microphones is quality. So this Burl B2 Bomber AD converter, I have 2 of those, and they're $4,000 each for 2 channels each. So they're very high-end converters, and so we'll use those. And so everything going in here is as good as anywhere you're going to get in town.
Awesome. And then I want to talk a little bit about mastering, because you did all the mastering too, right, Rain?
I didn't do the mastering. But now, Michael Arval, who is an engineer in town and friend of ours, we turned it over to him to mix it, because like I said, I set all the balances, and I did a lot of stuff. I mean, I got everything kind of where I thought it should be. And so then we gave it to Mike, and then now Mike's got all that hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear that I'm talking about on the back end process, and he's got the converter that goes the other way. This is, what do they call? They call this ADC. The other one's the opposite. So when you're playing back, you're getting the conversion, the high level of conversion on the mix. And so he's using all that stuff, and he had all kinds of imaging software. And he probably changed my panning a bit. As a matter of fact, I know he did. Which was good, because there's times when there's people in the group that are doing certain things, they need to be on one side together. Mm-hmm. And these people, and then that needs to change sometime. So that's a puzzle in itself. So anyway, I didn't want to be bothering with any of that. So he mixed it and he mastered it.
He mixed and mastered.
Yeah,
and then
did a great
we have
job.
The final product.
He did a nice job, because
I was there every day.
He took it from sounding really, really great, and it was like this, and he made it go like this.
Yeah,
and that's, to me, that's like, it's just not knowing a whole lot about recording and mastering and all that stuff. It's just that process is just like, okay, you send it off, and then all of a sudden it sounds what you put into the mic sounds great, but then they turn it into this final product. So Jeff, you were there for that process.
So let me say, So Mike Arval, one of his mentors is a great engineer, Dan Wallen, who he probably engineered over 500 feature films. He's won Oscars, all Grammys. And one thing that he taught Mike, and I watched Mike, and I have no idea how he did this, but he calls it, or what Dan Wallen calls it, is bringing the session into focus. And I don't know what he does, but when he's done, there's a clarity to every part. And John Williams told Dan Wallen, "You are the most dangerous engineer in this town," because when he does that, all of a sudden you hear that the second clarinet is a little out of tune, that you never noticed that. and now you can hear them, so Mike did that to this project, and fortunately, we're good. And but there's a clarity to this mix, and then he got into the mixing software and imaging and placing people where he was going to put them, and every mix is different. Every mix is for that tune. So he didn't come up with this is the mix and then everything just fits into it. And it took some time. I didn't realize it's a slow process, but you hear the result. I think it's mixed really well. And it really shows off this group, what it can really do in a great light.
Yeah, and especially hearing it, not in, hearing it in really quality headphones or speakers and not streaming it, which kind of gets to my next question. And I do want to talk a little bit about gear. And one of the coolest things you have about the liner notes in here, in the digital booklet, I have the hard copy, but the digital booklet lists all the gear of all the trumpet players, which is, as a trumpet player is so cool. But, the streaming thing, it's great to be able to listen to it, but you guys, this was a self-funded project, right? No one handed you a check and said, here, go do this. Isn't that right, Jeff?
No.
And so, as great as Spotify is, you don't really get paid for streaming it on Spotify, right?
No. So my hope is that next year this will get nominated for a Grammy, maybe even win a Grammy. I think the CD is good enough. It's world class playing on it, and I think it's good enough. But I don't, that's so. In order for something like that to even happen, it's got to be on these streaming channels so that people, voting members. I'm a voting member actually of the Grammys, but so people can hear it. So for now, it's going to be on there, and it's. People are buying it. It's not, I'm not buying a yacht or anything. None of us, I'm not buying 9 yachts. We're all going to have our vacation homes in Aspen or whatever. But I saw a clip, Wayne, of you with Maynard, and he was introducing the MF medley or something, and he goes, this is a medley of my hits. It's giving my extreme wealth.
Yeah, to my...
I'm sure he
said that every night.
He used that. Yeah, and I just laughed.
This is responsible for my incredible wealth, he would say.
Yeah, that's it. And I just laugh because we know. So none of us, I think, did this record thinking we were going to all retire and to our estates. And, we did this because we thought that it would be a really musical, good project to do. And I think it's good for the town itself, for our thing here, our business. Yeah, sure.
There's no, like there's no Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra out here. There's with a name attached to the city. Well, now there is, because Chris Walden just started this thing, the Pacific Jazz Orchestra. We just did our first gig, which is patterned like off the Metropole thing. So having something that says Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble, even though there's another 30 great trumpet players that could be used. It's not just us. Yeah. All our colleagues can play, obviously, but we did this thing. It kind of puts it on the map, and it brings attention to what can be done out here. And so, obviously, we're all fighting for work, different cities even,
Yeah.
And but if you put something out there, go, we got to do this in L.A. I want these players.
Yeah.
As opposed to going somewhere else and doing it and saving a couple of bucks maybe. So I think it's good. It's good for that as well.
Well, and I should mention, because if you're a trumpet player out there listening to this trumpet podcast, you can purchase the album digitally or hard copy CD, and if you want more projects like this, and I'm speaking to the listeners, you support projects like this, and it's great to have it on Spotify, but spend the $10 or the $15 to download it, and that will help fund this one or the next one. Just like PBS. You want to keep, hearing
it's becoming more and more difficult.
Or something.
It's become more and more difficult for projects like this to happen, because people are used to getting things for free. Especially this generation, and I'm not blaming them or anything. It's the business model now. And I always encourage students to buy people's, like I buy everybody's stuff. If somebody puts out a CD, a trumpet player, especially if I know them, I download it from iTunes and I buy it and I buy the physical CD. It's $20 out of my life to help support this project. My last CD was $65,000.
Jeez.
I paid.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult amount of money to recoup in a market that's under 5% of the total music market.
Yeah. But there are a lot of trumpet players out there and a lot of brass musicians, and if
if a
tenth of them bought the CD, we'd have a trumpet ensemble CD every couple of years.
I even bought this.
Yeah,
I even downloaded it. So
Thanks,
I've
Wayne.
actually purchased it, and I played on it. So I just wanted to have it, so anyway, I think that it's really important to do that. In general.
So if you guys are listening, buy the CD, buy it on Bandcamp. We'll have the links to where you can get it. We have it here at the shop as well for customers who walk in, and I mean, let's help support this one, and then hopefully we'll have more of these in the future, right?
Yeah.
every couple of years. We've already gone an hour. I really appreciate you guys' time. And normally when we get to this point, I ask you guys your best piece of advice. And Wayne, you've already been in the hot seat when you did an interview.
Yeah.
Jeff, you'll be in the hot seat when we do your own interview coming up here. But I figured since this is an homage to trumpet players, to the Hollywood scene, would each of you, what's your, let's say, your desert island soundtrack, Hollywood soundtrack trumpet player moment? Jeff, let's start with you. If you can listen to one.
See, this is why I said, ask me something like this in advance so I can have, because that's impossible to answer.
I can give you two if you want.
I have some too, but I'll go ahead.
Wayne,
Jeff.
you start.
Think about it, Jeff. Give it some thought.
Yeah.
I would have to say, as much as I respect all my colleagues, some of my favorite things are Tim Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Born on the 4th of July and JFK. Mm-hmm. Those soundtracks, for whatever reason, move me. It's John Williams, of course, so the tonal palette's going to be great. But there's something about the approach to those that's really that moves me. There's another soundtrack that's not as well known, and Jeff will know this though, and it's called Summersby, and it's a Danny Elfman score. And Malcolm McNabb plays the solo trumpet on this, and it's really difficult, like intervallically and stuff. And I listen to that thing in my car over and over and over and over. And I think Jeff, you might even hit me to that one. I can't remember if you hit me to that one or not.
I don't think
you
I
gave
did,
me a tape a long time ago with a bunch of film things, and the Tim Morrison things were on there. And
definitely.
Anyway, so those are the things that kind of stick out to me, as well as Star Wars.
Yeah.
I always something about that score. I'm only mentioning John Williams here pretty much, but
so we can do a mixtape. So a Desert Island mixtape.
And then of course
your favorite.
And of course Chinatown. I mean, I've listened to it till I still continue to listen to it. I recorded it on my record. I liked it so much. I had Gordon Goodwin do a chart on it, and so those are kind of, and there's others, of course, but those are kind of standouts to me. Music.
All right. Wayne set the precedent, so Jeff, you can name a couple if you want.
I mean,
it doesn't have to be one.
Stuff.
You did say one. Sorry.
It's okay. It's impossible. So there's a kind of a obscure picture called "Two for the Seesaw" that Andre Preva did that features you on Racy, and wow, that's a great soundtrack. And, there are some that are just great playing. James Horner did a picture called "The Rocketeer," and there's just some really hard. And Malcolm was playing first on that, and just hitting it home runs. It's great playing. And Chinatown, that's one of them, of course.
And the one other one, Jeff, let me interrupt you.
Sure.
Is The River.
Yes, well, that's right.
Which Jeff played on the CD and played it just fantastic,
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
That's another one that I've listened to.
Warren Looning, oh my. He's amazing. And anything that he played on, he's so lyrical and just, he's
I'm going to go on
incredible.
the record as saying Warren Looning is the most versatile trumpet player I've ever sat next to.
I think I can say that too. He was incredible and a really great person, and just played great.
And liked good wine.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
I'm sensing some themes here. I'm sensing some themes.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Jeff and I are kind of winos a little bit here.
Yeah, and we like to hang out with Warren and have a nice glass of wine.
Yeah. I'm just noticing on this though, Jeff, it's homage. I always thought it was fromage. Oh man, do I feel?
Well, with that,
Am I red in the face? Oh my God.
with that, Jeff, Wayne, absolute honor to have you on here, and I mean, thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting the CD out. I know it was a passion project, not something that again you guys are buying your 9 yachts off of. So to all our listeners, I hope you'll go out and either download the digital version or buy the CD. And I think, Jeff, you even have some autographed CDs on the site. Those might be sold out already.
I think there's one left. So if you
okay, well, I might go buy that one. I might go buy that one. But yeah, Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble. We'll have the links to where you can get that. Absolute honor having you both on here. Thank you
for having us. This is really
thank you.
To do this once again with you. This is really our honor, I think. And thanks for everything.
And let me say one thing. It was an honor for me too to work with all these great trumpet players and do this CD. That's really was a great thing for me.
Yeah, I hope it's not a one-time thing. I hope we get a volume 2.
We may. I don't know if we have enough years left though.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'll be 80 years old. You're gonna have to start lowering the keys.
Awesome. Oh, what a fun interview that was. I always have to pinch myself of how fortunate I am to get to talk to folks like Jeff and Wayne. Thank you, Jeff and Wayne, for spending your morning with us, and even bigger thanks for your hard work in getting this album out to the public. Again, as we talked about, it was a pure passion project, self-funded, and they were the driving forces behind it. And of course, a thank you to all the players that took part in it as well. And would be remiss without mentioning Jerry Hay for contributing the last chart to the album as well, kind of the icing on the cake. While we hear these players every day on the movies and television shows, it is also great to hear them featured on an album like this. So I hope there's a volume 2 in the future. As we mentioned on the podcast, Homage is available on the streaming services, but I would ask you to support projects like this, either by buying the physical CD or by buying the download from Bandcamp. We'll have the links to get you to those places below in the episode description or in the show notes for this episode that are available at bobreeves.com. I know the physical CD is available from Jeff on Bandcamp. Wayne Bergeron has it on his website. And we have physical copies here at the shop. So if you want to come in, drop by the shop and say hello, you can pick up an LA Trumpet Ensemble CD as well. Also, I want to mention that we've interviewed most of the folks on this album. So you can go back if you want to learn more about the players that were featured in the Los Angeles Trumpet Ensemble. You can listen to interviews with Wayne Bergeron, John Lewis, Dan Fernero, Larry Hall, Dan Rosenboom, and most recently, Marisa Benedict, who we had on over the summer. Jeff Bunnell will be on the podcast in the near future here, as well as Rob Scheer, who is both of them have agreed to come on to the show. So go back into the archives of this podcast and you can listen more about these fabulous players. For those of you who listen to the audio version of this podcast, I have some exciting news. I mentioned a few episodes ago that we do have some exciting things coming up, and we will be adding video versions on YouTube of these podcasts when they're available. We can't do video all the time, but for example, this will be the first episode that is available in video. So head on over to the Bob Reeves Brass channel on YouTube, and you can watch us as well as listening to us. So you can hit that subscribe button over there. But as always, we will keep the audio version for those of you who are driving and or just don't want to watch us. That's fine. You can still listen to us in your earbuds. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and let's go and make some music.